Welcome to the show. I'm Shane Norton, aka the Sports Card Nobody, and this is another episode of the Sports Card Nobody podcast. Once again, coming to you on YouTube. It worked out well last week. I think I'm going to do this every single week. Pretty excited about it. But like I said last week, fear not, because the podcast is still the driving factor behind this show. So thank you so much to everybody who watched. Thank you so much to everybody who listened last week. Last week was a phenomenal episode. I had Rob Girard, the sports card therapist, come on here, and he was dropping some major wisdoms that is actually going to lead to the main sort of point of this episode this week. So if you didn't listen, go back, check out last week's episode. You can find it anywhere you podcast, and you can find it on YouTube as well. So if you're staring at my pretty mug here, you can find that link pretty easily. But all right. Let's get into what is going on, because the sports world for me right now is not good. The 49ers are not a good football team, not one bit. Week 1, Trey Lance goes down. He's done for the year. Jimmy Garoppolo somehow is still the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. Yikes. Not going well. Well, they did win week 2, which was awesome. They beat the Seahawks, so a divisional win, but this week they face the Broncos, which would probably come up in some of the rankings of worst game of the year. I can't imagine there's going to be a worse game in the rest of 2022. Jimmy Garoppolo pulled the Dan Orlovsky, ran himself out of bounds in the end zone, which is a sack. He sacked himself. You know, it wasn't the butt fumble, I guess, and there was a butt punt this week, so some good football. Anyway, 49ers stink, and it's rough, which leads right into fantasy football is not going well for me. I have my main league that I care a lot about, and I am 0-3. And I have my secondary league that I am doing with the incomparable Zan Morning, a wrestling card fantasy football league, and I am 0-3. So I don't think I will be adding any cards to my collection for fantasy football MVPs for this year. So we can move on from that. But some things that are going well in the sports world for me, the Dodgers just won their 106th game. That is 3 straight full seasons in which they have won 106 games. That has never happened in baseball in its entire history. Not to mention in the shortened season, they had a win percentage that was even better than a 106 win season. Had that gone 162 games, who knows what they could have done. But man, oh man, I did an episode a couple weeks back where I counted down the greatest baseball teams of all time, and it was sort of based on the idea that this Dodgers team truly is off to a, well, I shouldn't say off to, the season's almost over, but having a historic type season. They are in the midst of a historic type run. I don't want to toss around the word dynasty until they can win another World Series championship, which I am hopeful is going to happen this year. Fingers crossed on that one. We will see. But yeah, I had a whole episode talking about that and sort of, you know, some of the best teams that ever played the game, some of the best seasons ever put together. So again, you should go back and check out that pod. That was pre-YouTube, so you won't find that here, but you can find it wherever you do your podcasting. But all right, so something about this year that has been truly special outside of what the Dodgers have been doing. We have Aaron Judge chasing down Roger Maris's 61. As of tonight, he was still at 60. I don't know if they played tonight, or, I might be outdated by the time this comes out. He may have already hit 61, 62, and who knows. But it looks like Aaron Judge is going to take down that hallowed Yankees record and become one of just a handful of guys ever hit 60 in a single season. Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, Roger Maris, Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds, I think are the only other guys that have ever hit 60. And Aaron Judge looks like he has a chance to really get into that 61, 62 area and become the all-time Yankees leader in home runs. I'm not a Yankees fan, but I am rooting for Judge. What a likable guy he is. I hope he does it. And I think he will. I think they have something like 9 or 10 games left. He's definitely going to get there. I have full hope that Aaron Judge is going to get there. But something else in the home run world that has been dominating the news, you have probably heard, but the machine, Albert Pujols, on Friday, September 23rd, against my Dodgers, smacked 2 no-doubt home runs. and they were numbers 699 on his career and 700. Pujols became just the fourth player ever to get to 700 home runs. Right above him is Babe Ruth, then Hank Aaron, and then Barry Bonds. How insanely lucky that we are that we got to watch the career of Albert Pujols. It does look like this is going to be his final season. Now that he's just smacked number 700, I can't imagine he comes back for one more year. But how awesome, how lucky we are in the history of mankind that we got to exist at the same time that Albert Pujols' career happened. And I got to witness the entire thing. That is crazy. All 700 of his home runs. That is something special to behold. I'm going to talk more about him later. Here's a little tease. I am actually going to do a countdown, an Albert Pujols related countdown this year. That's what I'm going to dedicate my top 5 to. I'm going back to the jersey countdown. Albert Pujols wears number 5. At the end of this episode, I'll be doing the top 5 athletes to ever wear the number 5. So I'll talk more about Albert there, but congratulations to him. It was cool, even though it happened against the Dodgers. I'm glad I got to watch it live. Dodgers got smacked in that game. They lost 11-0. What are you going to do? Still a great season. But let's move on. All right, like I talked about at the top there, last week I had Rob Girard on, the sports car therapist. Rob is so awesome to talk to. I mean, just the responses I got from the episode alone will tell you how much of an effect he has on collectors in this hobby, how much of a voice that he has sort of garnered for himself. People genuinely like hearing what he has to say, and there's great reason for that. Rob is fully engulfed in this hobby. He is out at card shows left and right. He's doing his thing. He's selling and trading. He's leveling up constantly, as he talks about. And he's a cool dude. He's a really cool dude. He's really genuine and authentic. Again, go back and listen to that episode if you haven't, but even more so, go check out his podcast, The Sports Car Therapist. He's on YouTube. He's on, all the different podcasts. A great guy to listen to and to know. I'm very thankful that I've got to meet him a few times in person, as well as the digital relationship that we formed because of this insanely awesome hobby. But the reason I'm referencing that episode so much is because I had him on the podcast due to some gears that have been moving in my brain. Some, I don't know, these ideas sort of latch on sometimes and they engulf you and are kind of hard to get rid of. That happens to me quite a bit. It's a big reason I get obsessed with different things, different hobbies, different collections, those sorts of things. Just the way my brain works sometimes is I'll get this idea and it'll just sort of sink its teeth into me and I kind of can't stop thinking about it. So I decided I wanted to have Rob on because I wanted to pick his brain to sort of help marinate this idea. And it's really not that crazy of an idea, but I guess I'll stop sort of, being wishy-washy and just get to it. Something Rob has done in this hobby and done on his podcast that is so truly, truly impressive is set a goal and then knock that goal out of the park. I talked about it with him last week. One of the massive goals that he accomplished was he set out for his season 2 of his podcast was he wanted to acquire a $100,000 card. That is insanely unattainable to me. I call myself the sports card nobody because that is not the game that I'm playing. I am not playing a 6-figure game. But the number isn't what's important there. The fact of the matter is Rob had his reasons for wanting to acquire that card. He talks about it on his podcast. He talks about it last week, so I'm not going to go into it here, but he had his reasons that are more than just the fact that it's a $100,000 card. He wanted that card, and he set out into the universe in motion that goal. He said it on his podcast. He set it out to, on the public. He's got a lot of listeners, a lot more listeners than I do. So he had all these people that he kind of, has to not only be accountable to himself to achieve these goals, but to all of his listeners and, folks who are, genuinely along with him on his journey. And he did it. He did it, I think in May, it was the month that he acquired this monster piece for his collection. I mean, it's daunting even thinking about having that kind of a goal and going after it and achieving it. But he did it. Rob set the goals and he met that goal. And now he's got kind of a new goal. And that new goal is he is pursuing a spot in the top 10 of the world in terms of Hulk Hogan collectors. And already he has amassed an insane Hulk Hogan collection. Most recently, I don't know if it's the card he's most proud to own, but it might be. But he talked about on his show, he got himself a Hulk Hogan Upper Deck exclusives, employee exclusives, precious metal gems Hulk Hogan card. There are only 125 of those in existence. And I think he talks about there's only something like 35 of them that have ever been graded total, not just PSA 10 pop count, but total pop count. Something like 35 cards. That is an extremely rare card that definitely puts him in that sort of upper echelon of Hulk Hogan collectors alone. He actually had a great podcast that just came out this week where there's a lot of debate about what the most important Hulk Hogan card is. A lot of people are going to go with the 82 All-Stars, whatever. That precious metal gems is so rare and so scarce that puts him in that conversation of top 10 Hulk Hogan collectors in the world. And holy crap, that's incredible. Again, the guy sets a goal. He sets a mark. He sets a target and just nails it. Absolutely nails it. Now that brings me to what I want to talk about for myself and kind of why I had him on the podcast, because very selfishly, I was trying to pick the brain of somebody who's very good at setting goals and achieving them. I believe that one of my biggest, self-hurdles in trying to achieve various things in life is being able to set goals and get them. And what I think can kind of hold me back, and maybe there's folks out there that are listening to me that can semi-relate to this, maybe not, but I hope so. I sometimes can think about a goal and struggle with the idea that it is achievable, and that can hold me back. So for instance, let's just use Rob. $100,000 card he wanted to achieve. That to me sounds like something I will never ever do. I am the sports card nobody. I don't see myself ever having a 6-figure card. My house is the only 6-figure thing that I own, and I am paying a mortgage on that every single week. That impacts my ability to own a 6-figure card. I should just sell the house. Can you trade houses at the National? I'm going to check into that next year in Chicago, see if I can do that. Anyway, so achieving something of that level is so beyond anything that I can comprehend that it's not even something I would set out there and try to do. But I still want to have goals. And there are goals that I have done. For instance, I talk about these things all of the time. My 2020 Topps Finest wrestling collection. In the background, on my little green screen background here, I think there's 7 cards back there. I think 6 of them are all Topps Finest from 2020. Gold is in the red Brett. I've done decent sort of building that out. I'm proud of it. There's definitely people out there who have far better 2020 Finest collections than I do. I don't know if I'll ever be even top 10 in that category. But I did set out that little goal. I fell in love with that set, and I went after it, and I've been acquiring different pieces. And in the end, I definitely have something that I'd like to, pull out of the cabinet and look at those cards. I just did that today with my daughter. My daughter and I laid them all out, and we put them in order. She talked about which ones she likes and, which one's her favorite. She asked me which was my favorite. And I got to have that sort of collector moment, with that sort of collection that I've been building out. Another big one is, I've been trying to build out a Bret Hart PC. I am a Bret Hart stan, big time. I'm wearing a Fight Like an 8-Year-Old Girl AEW FTR t-shirt. I don't know if there's bigger Bret Hart stans in the world, but I'm probably in that argument. I absolutely adore what Bret Hart did with his career. So building out a modest Bret Hart PC is a goal of mine. I don't think I'll ever be a top 10 collector of Bret Hart cards in the world, but I think I'll be the top collector in this house for Bret Hart cards. So little by little, I've been building that out as well. So I've got these goals, these sort of minor hobby goals that I've been doing. I'm definitely happy where they go. But when I set out to do this podcast, I really set out to do this podcast for reasons that I have talked about a lot, which is I wanted to push myself into the hobby deeper. I wanted to force myself to take some different steps that I am not always the most comfortable doing. I have talked about how I'm a little bit of like a reserved guy. I'm not the kind of guy that walks into any room that exists and just commands that room. It's just not really who I am. I can be comfortable talking, and that's kind of the reason I did this. Like, I can sit down and do this, and I'm fine just spouting out some BS. And apparently, some folks like to listen to it, which is amazing. But to try to think about this hobby and think about networking that I wanted to do, it was hard to see how that could happen without taking a drastic step. And one of those drastic steps that I did was start this show. This started to put me in different, comfort zones, or pushing me out of different comfort zones where I'd talk to people and reach out and make connections. And it's worked out tremendously. I have made so many more friends in this hobby than I ever thought was going to be imaginable. Now, I didn't have a hard number on what that was going to look like. I didn't know if I was going to do 10 episodes. I didn't know if I was going to do 42 episodes, which is what this is, or if I'm going to do 1,000 episodes. I just went out and did it. That's kind of how I can operate. I get an idea, it grabs a hold of me, and then I just do it. And starting a content creation journey was one of those ideas, and so I just went for it. And now here I am, 42 episodes in. And it's going pretty well. I'm pretty proud of what this has become. I am not a top 10 podcaster in the world or a top 10 YouTuber in the world in terms of the sports card hobby. I am definitely at my nobody level, and I am loving every single second of that. So I don't have often hard, quantifiable, achievable goals, right? That's something at work you're supposed to do a lot, is have something that's achievable so that you can achieve that goal, and then that justifies your raise. Rob did that. Rob had those hard numbers: a $100,000 card, a top 10 collector of Hulk Hogan cards in the world. And I started to wonder to myself, what is going to be my next goal? I'm just sort of floating where I'm at right now, and I'm enjoying myself very, very much. I don't have a hard goal for the 2020 Finest collection. I don't have a hard goal for this Bret Hart collection. There's just something that I do that I'm just sort of enjoying myself, and is this sort of activity to do. But if I want to try to take another step forward in this hobby, I think that I need to start thinking like Rob. I think I need to start setting a harder goal with a real definable number so that I have something to strive for, something to gain. And so I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to do that. Now, what is that goal going to be? I think I'm going to steal a little bit of a page, much smaller version out of Rob's book. I would like to acquire a 4-figure card. That's a drop in the hat for some people. To me, it's a huge, huge number to even think that that's possible. But I would like to own a card that is unquestionably valued at $1,000. Now, I don't have a card in mind of what that will be. I think Rob actually did. When he set out the $100,000 goal, he was just kind of being a little bit coy with it, but he knew what card he wanted. He knew it was going to be a LeBron James rookie card. I think the Ultimate Collections, which is a phenomenal card. I don't have that card right now. I am trying to use the number as a driving factor to start to find a way to accomplish a goal, right? So why this number, though? Why a 4-figure card? Why a $1,000 card? Well, I have several cards that have teased that level. I've talked about a trade I made at the National where I gave up like a 7-1 trade. I forget all the cards, exactly what it was, but I ended up with a PSA 10 Hulk Hogan Atomic Refractor 2015 Topps. Great card. I love that card. I did not have a Hulk Hogan card in my collection. I wanted a GOAT card, and I was able to get one. To me, Hulk Hogan is the GOAT of professional wrestling. I've talked about it a lot. I will talk about it some more. I'm a Bret Hart guy, but I got to give Hogan his flowers. I got to give him his due. He is at the top of the Mount Rushmore. So I did finally acquire that piece, and at the time, I think there were some comps around $1,200. It was roughly a $1,000 card, right around $900 to $1,000 was something like the Card Ladder values. I think right now Card Ladder has it at around $850, but But, there has been a recent comp on that card somewhere around 450. So I would argue that that's not truly a $1,000 card. Again, there's been a couple other cards that have sort of teased maybe ending up in that level. My Rock Gold 2020 Chrome, when DCI told me that thing was a 9, maybe that would have been in that conversation, but it's not. You all know the story about my PSA 6 that ended up as. Go back a couple episodes around the national time and you can hear more about that nightmare of a grading scenario for me, but whatever. So I don't truly have a card at that level. So I'm choosing that number because it's a round number, because it does actually feel like I can get there without anything super crazy needing to happen. But I do think it is going to force me to do something important that is actually the big reason for this goal as well. Why do I want a $1,000 card? Why do I want a 4-figure card? It's not just because of the number. The reason I want this sort of a number is because what it forces me to do. Rob talked about this last week. I immediately fell in love with it when he said it, although he has said it in his podcast before. But for me to get a 4-figure card, I am going to need to be active. Participation is required. That is something that the sports card therapist says, and that is what I am actually hoping to do with this goal. I am hoping to get more active than I have ever been in this hobby. This last year, especially with this podcast, I have been more active than I ever was before. I am now hoping to take another step forward and be more active than I have been this whole year. I want to be active selling. I want to be even more active networking, even though I'm really happy with the way that has gone. I want to be active in trying to achieve this. And the only way that's going to happen is if I can get the hobby to help pay for the hobby. It is a goal that people have, striven for since the dawn of collecting things. If you can get your hobby to pay for itself, that is huge. I have had some wins. I have had some losses. My biggest investment that I took, in fact, when I first started this show, I started as a YouTube show, and there's an episode where I make a $2,000 investment. Basically, I bought a case of Topps Chrome 2021. That basically ended up paying for itself. When it was all said and done, I broke about even on that, which is still awesome. But I'm going to want to start to push myself to get a little more fluid, to get more opportunities of getting cash, so that when opportunities arise to get a bigger card, to get a 4-figure card, that I can try to do that. So, one of the ways that I am hoping to achieve this is something that Rob was able to do with his sports card journey, and that has become more active in the selling stage, like I said. But I would like to start to figure out how to dip my toes into getting a table at some different local card shows. Rob is a fixture in the scene here in the Connecticut area. I had the Cousins Collectibles, awesome dudes in the hobby. Please go check out their podcast as well. They were on the show. I was on their show. I don't even remember which show it was that we talked about this, but they shared a story about the first times that they got some tables. They don't do it often, but they tried it out and they were able to make some cash. So that is something that I think I want to do. And my buddy Justin, one of my closest friends, Suplexes and Slap Shots on Instagram, he and I have kind of talked about it on a very scratching the surface level. Maybe we try to do this together, and I 100% think that is going to be the way I attack this. That I think that is going to be the driving force to try to make this a reality. Now, I have some fears about this. I have some real concerns. One of the big concerns is both Justin and I, both Suplexes and Slapshots and I, we're big wrestling collectors. When we show up, at whatever show that we do, I don't know how fluid we're going to be. Wrestling has a market without question. If you don't think wrestling cards have a market, you are stuck in the sand. Your blinders are on. Your card worldview is a little limited. But that market is not necessarily everywhere. That market is not necessarily folks who are just looking to flip and make a quick buck. So that market exists online a lot. You have to try to find that market. When I went to the National, one of the biggest disappointments that I came away with was how little wrestling there really was. I've talked about it in some of my recaps about what the National was. And when I've gone to different card shows, there's only really ever a few folks who will be selling wrestling cards. And it's often Hulk Hogan, it's often The Rock, it's often the bigger names. Meanwhile, I'm a 2020 Finest collector. To be fair, that collection and that obsession actually started because of cards I found at a show here in Connecticut at Mohegan Sun at the ECCA. November 19th and 20th is the next iteration of that show, and I will be there for that as well. But nonetheless, in general, trying to find these things can be a little bit of a challenge, which is because finding buyers is a little bit of a challenge. So if this happens the way that I'm hoping, if Justin and I set up and we're loaded with wrestling cards, I don't know how many I'm going to be able to sell. That creates a little bit of a fluidity problem that, people who are investing in Josh Allen, people who are investing in Justin Herbert, well, before the ribs that just happened, LeBron James, Patrick Mahomes, some of these obviously bigger names, you can usually find some way to buy and sell those cards on a regular basis. Those are much more fluid. So I don't know what's going to happen if and when this does take place. I definitely have some more traditional stick and ball cards. I definitely have some things I think will move, but I've actually moved a lot of them both at the National and through eBay, already. But we'll see. There's only one way to find out if my wrestling cards are going to make me some money, and that's to try to sell them to other people. Which brings me to the next big concern that I have. As you all know, I am in this because I am a collector. I am a hoarder. I buy the cards that I do because I am trying to express something about myself. I am trying to tell a story about the things that I love and the things that I am passionate about. I am not trying to flip. I am not trying to be an investor. I am not trying to be Gary Vee. I am not trying to be the sports card investor. I am trying to be the sports card nobody. And the sports card nobody loves to tell stories. And because I'm an egotistical guy, I like to tell stories about myself, and these cards help me do that. These cards help express something about me. When you come in my office, you see these cards, you go, oh, this guy's a Dodgers fan. This guy's a Bret Hart fan. This guy, whatever. That's why I do this. So what that means is as I try to get more active and I try to sell and trade and level up, as Rob would put it, that means I got to get rid of some things that I really like. And that's a real concern of mine. Do I really want to sell one of my Bret Hart cards with the hope that cash can turn into a bigger card that I might like as much as that Bret Hart card? I don't know. That's going to be a little bit of rough waters I'm going to have to figure out how to navigate for this goal. But I am going to go for it. I am going to start making real strides towards being more active. Participation is required, and I want to put forth that participation. I want to level up. I want to consolidate and come away with some bigger cards that will force me to do this extra level of participation. So I'm going to go for it. And I'm curious. I actually asked this in the post interview part of my podcast last week. I didn't hear back from anybody. But I'm curious if any of you have some goals that you would like to share. Is there anything you're hoping to accomplish by the end of this year? Is there anything you're hoping to accomplish at the beginning of next year? Is there anything you're hoping to accomplish right now? I would love to hear it. And if you've got any of those stories, reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram at SportsCardNobody. You can find me on Twitter at SportCardNobody. I'm on Facebook as well. And of course, as always, if you are enjoying this, please like and subscribe. Leave a review at your podcast hub of choice. With the YouTube thing, there's like a little like button. Please click that, subscribe, do all that good stuff. But more than anything, if you are enjoying what I am talking about, or if you're curious about what's going to happen, with these goals that I'm setting forth, share this. Share this with friends, share this with family, share this with anybody you think might care about anything I have to say here. Because more than anything, that's what helps the show grow, and it has been growing. So thank you to everybody who's helped promote and push the show and do all those things that have gotten me to a place that I am super, super proud to be. But enough with the promotions, enough with the self-aggrandizing and all that stuff. Let me know what your goals are. You now know some of my upcoming goals. But why don't we get to the main event? Why don't we get to this week's top 5? And it is Albert Pujols related. The machine, as I talked about, just hit number 700, becoming one of 4 people to have ever accomplished that goal in the entire history of professional baseball. That is unreal. So proud that I get to watch it. Pretty stoked that it actually happened against the Dodgers. Good for Albert. Good for T.O. Albert. What a career the dude has had. 10 years he spent with the Cardinals, and those first 10 years of his career were really among the best in the history of the game. Arguably the best hitter, the best right-handed hitter of all time. His first 10 years were better than Mike Trout's first 10 years when you really get down to brass tacks. But what happened after that is really the biggest thing keeping Albert from being maybe the greatest baseball player of all time, and that's he signed with the Angels in the next 10 years or whatever it ended up being before he ended up with the Dodgers last year. Didn't go as well as the first 10 years. That contract did not work out for Anaheim. I got to be honest, I'm not too upset about that because, hey, stop pretending you're in LA. I like watching the Angels suffer. Go Dodgers. Anyway, he's really regressed quite a bit. Trouble staying on the field. Numbers really dwindled. And so those next 10 years were not nearly as close as his first 10 years. Then he ended up with the Dodgers last year, had a huge rejuvenation to his want to continue to play. He decided to come back for one more year to finish with the team where it all started back in St. Louis. And now this second half, I mean, he has been on a tear. I think he's up to 21 home runs in the season to get himself to 700. I mean, I don't know. All of a sudden it's feeling like the Babe who was at 714 is just pretty in reach, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think Pujols is going to come back next year. But regardless, this is, this monumental moment in the history of the game, this monumental moment in the history of Pujols' life is something to celebrate, and I wanted to celebrate it here on the podcast. So I am doing an Albert Pujols themed, I guess, top 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to return it back to the jersey number countdowns. I haven't done this in a while now, but I'm going to do the top 5 athletes to ever wear number 5 in honor of Albert Pujols, who does rock the number 5. So why don't we get right into it? The top 5 athletes to ever wear the number 5. Start with number 5, Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett, who really actually wore the number 21 with the Minnesota Timberwolves longer than he wore the number 5, but he wore the number 5 with the Boston Celtics, part of that legendary Big Three. He came over. They were finally able to win the championship in 2008. Some will say that was actually a disappointment that team only won one championship. They went back but lost to the Lakers a couple years later. But Kevin Garnett's career includes that 2008 championship. He went to the Hall of Fame in 2020. He was a 15-time All-Star. He led the league in total rebounds 4 times. He was Defensive Player of the Year in that 07-08 campaign. He was the 03-04 MVP, and he was named to 9 All-NBA teams. Kevin Garnett, number 5, top 5 players to ever wear the number 5. That brings me to the number 4. Cincinnati Reds legend Johnny Bench, 14-time All-Star, 2-time MVP. He won the World Series twice. He was the World Series MVP, and one of those, he was a key cog of the famed Big Red Machine. He won 10 Gold Gloves at the catcher position, finished his career with 75.1 WAR. He led the National League in home runs twice in 1970 with 45 and 1972 with 40. Johnny Bench, number 4, greatest athletes to ever wear the number 5. And that brings me to number 3. We're going hockey. We're going Nicholas Lidstrom, Hall of Fame in 2015, 4-time Stanley Cup champion. He was a 12-time All-Star, and he was considered the greatest defenseman of his generation. And the dude's got 7 Norris Cups to back up that claim. Meanwhile, he won the Smythe Trophy for the most valuable player in the playoffs during that Detroit Red Wings 01-02 Stanley Cup campaign. Detroit Red Wings legend Nicklas Lidstrom comes up at number 3. Greatest athletes to ever wear the number 5. And that brings me to number 2. Maybe you thought he was going to win just because of the number 700, but he doesn't. Number 2 is Albert Pujols. Listen, the 10 years that happened in Anaheim, really put a little bit of a damper on his overall career, but boy, was this still a legendary career. The obvious 700 home runs, one of 4 players to ever do that. He's at 101 career WAR now, and he's still going to probably add to that a little bit more before he finishes. Career OPS plus of 143, won a batting title in 2003, and oh, by the way, 3-time MVP, won 2 World Series championships with those Cardinals teams. Albert is the machine, but he does fall to number 2. And why is that? Who tops out Tio Albert? Come on. It's obvious. It's always a Yankee, isn't it? It is always a Yankee when it comes to baseball and sports all-time legends. Number 1, greatest athlete to ever wear the number 5 is Joe DiMaggio. Who else could it be? Nobody. 325 career batting average, 155 career OPS plus. Finished his career with 79.2 WAR. Dude won 2 batting titles. He was a 3-time MVP, a 13-time All-Star, 9-time World Series champion. What else do you need to know? I don't think everybody else combined above had 9 championships on this list. So yeah, Joe DiMaggio is number 1. Oh, by the way, went to the Hall of Fame in 1955. Oh, by the way, the dude that accomplished one of the most hallowed sports records of all time, that insane 56-game hitting streak, a record that likely will never be broken. Joe DiMaggio, without question, the greatest athlete to have ever worn the number 5. Congratulations, Joe DiMaggio. Amongst all of your accomplishments, you now have the best one, and that is being named to the Sports Card Nobody top 5 athletes to ever do something list. Top 5 thing that I do. Congratulations. Let's recap. Number 5, Kevin Garnett. Number 4, Johnny Bench. Number 3, Nicklas Lidstrom. Number 2, Albert Pujols. Number 1, Joe DiMaggio. But this is a sports card podcast, so let's talk some sports cards. Joe DiMaggio. Let's talk some of his vintage stuff, shall we? Listen, the dude played a long time ago. Played well before traditional sports cards were taking hold. So there's a lot of debate about what his actual rookie card is. So I went with by far the most fun one on the list. That's his 1938 Gaudy heads-up card. You have got to see this thing. If you're on YouTube, I will punch it up somewhere. I don't know. You'll see it somewhere on here if you're on YouTube. But listen, this card is like a picture of Joe DiMaggio's head. Looks inflated, like the old NBA Jam game when you could put in the big head code. And it's on like a cartoon body swinging a bat. It's terrible. It's hilarious. It's awesome. It is all those things. And there's actually 2 of them in that 1938 Gaudy set. There is card number 250, which is just that caricature. And then there's card number 274 that comes with all these cool, like, comic cartoons around him. Again, if you're on YouTube, you're going to see what these look like. But listen, spoiler alert, all of Joe DiMaggio's early stuff is super expensive. These are no exception to that rule. The heads up, card number 250 and a PSA 1 with a Pop 53 is still $2,000. For grins, I looked up a PSA 5. That's a Pop 35. That's a $6,500 card. His PSA 8.5, which is a Pop 2, $165,000. So if you got that laying around, you can go get that. Now, if you want the parallel, I guess you can call that, with the cartoons, PSA 1 Pop 55 is $2,500. PSA 5 Pop 44 is $10K. That's it. Easy peasy. PSA 9 Pop 3. A cool $850,000. My house is not that much money. So, yeah, shocker. One of the greatest baseball players of all time, the greatest dude ever, with the number 5. His vintage stuff is pricey. It is out of my sports card nobody range. So what I love to do is look up other stuff. You don't just have to buy vintage. You don't just have to get rookie cards. There is so much stuff out there. So on eBay right now, I decided to see what was available, and there are 2 cards that I dig quite a bit. a 2020 National Treasures bat relic numbered to 10. It's actually card 10 of 10. This card is phenomenal. It's unlicensed, so you have to be okay with that fact. Panini does not have the MLB trademark, so you have Joe DiMaggio on there. You won't see any of the Yankees logos, but it is Joe DiMaggio. It is a photograph, and it has a bat relic, a game-used, player-used bat relic, all guaranteed on the back of the card. This thing is selling for a buy it now of $99.99. For $100, you can go get yourself a phenomenally gorgeous National Treasures card that includes a piece of a bat that Joe DiMaggio used. That is dope. That is rad. If you can't afford the vintage stuff, like me, if you're a nobody like me, there is some really cool stuff out there for you to get. Now, next up, sorry, Zan Morning. Sorry, other folks who don't like the gold rush, as it were. I'm a gold guy. It is what it is. 2012 Topps Archive Gold Hollow Refractor with a buy it now of $50 of Joe DiMaggio. It's a little strange. The juxtaposition of a vintage baseball player on a gold refractor. I kind of dig it. It's fun. It's $50 for the buy it now. There's no OBO on there. Maybe you could email the seller and get it a little bit cheaper. I don't know. Might be worth a shot if you dig that sort of thing, because I do. I don't know if I'm ever going to have one of these 1938 Gaudis or some of the other vintage quote-unquote rookie cards that DiMaggio has, but I might go get that National Treasures card if I really wanted a Joe D in my collection. There is some cool stuff out there. Don't just be tied to what the hobby tells you is the rookie card. What the hobby tells you is the card to get, because you collect the way you want to collect, and that is something I would seriously consider. Bonus. All right. Listen, I typically, when I do my top 5 countdowns, I count them down just like I did, and then the winner gets, their cards listed off. But come on, Pujols just hit number 700. Bonus time, we're talking some Pujols cards. Here we go. If you want his rookie card, what is kind of considered one of the most, I'm spinning you around here, one of the most important modern-ish rookie cards is Albert Pujols' 2001 Bowman Chrome rookie auto numbered to 500. This is an expensive card, and especially right now. Listen, everything I'm about to talk about, now is not the time to buy a Pujols card. Just hit 700. You probably want to be at the selling end of these transactions, but nonetheless, if you are interested, right now the 2001 Bowman Chrome rookie auto numbered to 500, PSA 10 with a pop of 6 is $500,000. Even raw, that thing is about $12K. If you want a non-auto rookie, his 2001 Topps Chrome traded, that is and a PSA 10 is about a pop 400, is still $2,600. PSA 9 with a pop of 883 is getting a little more affordable at $645. Hold on. I gotta just pick this up. If you're on YouTube, you're seeing me struggle with this. And podcast, I'm trying to get my notes up. All right, so back to the show here. All right, if you want something, here's something I like to do, something I want to talk about. If you want those rookie cards and you got the money, you got the pockets, you go get them. I don't always do that. I don't always have the money for that, as I talk about all the time. But there are other ways to collect. I like to collect cards of players from a year that is significant to me. 2020 is the most significant year for baseball cards for me. Why? The Dodgers finally won the World Series. I was 5 when they won in 88. I don't have a single memory of that Kirk Gibson home run. I have nothing but memories of that final out thrown by Julio Urias. I can visualize Corey Seager just tearing up that World Series and winning World Series MVP, going head-to-head with Randy Arozarena, who would have won it had the Rays pulled it out. But that's not what happened. The Dodgers won. That 2020 season is very important to me. Above me on a shelf, I have a 2020 shelf of Topps Chrome and now Topps Finest cards of some of the most significant players from those teams, because that year means something to me. You can do something like that for yourself if you are a Pujols fan. Listen, the dude won his first MVP, his first of 3 in 2005. So you can go out and get yourself a 2005 Topps Refractor, and those range between $60 and $150. That is totally affordable. It's a cool looking card. It has the year that he won his first MVP. How fun is that? What a cool way to collect a legendary player. Now, maybe you're more interested in the year that he actually won his first World Series, which was in 2006. Kind of a bonus to this is in 2006, the cards always have pictures from the year previous. So in 2006, you're actually getting cards from Pujols pictured during his MVP campaign. I prefer to have the year that matches up with the event. But if you want the pictures of Pujols from the MVP campaign, you can get them in the 2006 Topps cards. You can get and one of the cool things about this card that I'm going to share is they actually had a Topps MVP refractor. So the 2006 set has Pujols, and they're celebrating the fact that he won the MVP the year prior. And, this is the year that he won the World Series in 2006. You can get a black refractor of that numbered to 549 for $350, or you can get the blue refractor for $99. These are available on eBay right now as I'm recording this. Maybe they'll be gone. Maybe I'll buy them and put them in my PC. So I talk about this all the time. You don't just have to buy rookie cards. You don't just have to buy vintage. You can buy what you like. You can figure out how to tell the stories you want to tell. I like to tell stories about that 2020 year. Maybe you want to tell stories about when you saw Albert Pujols win his first MVP. You figure it out for yourself, but don't just tie yourself to these $500,000 cards. There's a lot of ways for you to express yourself, a lot of ways to get that passion and that love for collecting out there, especially a guy the caliber of Albert Pujols. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got. That's the top 5. Those are some cards that are worth looking at. I'm setting some goals. I would love to hear the goals that you're setting, something that you're striving for. Share them with me. Share them again at Sports Card Nobody on Instagram, at Sport Card Nobody on Twitter. But ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got. Have a good night.